Hi, Kim.
Hi, dear.
I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so welcome to this week's episode of Love Dripping from the Walls. And as most of my previous listeners know, Love Dripping from the Walls is not just about, you know, happy go lucky rainbows and sunshine like there's always love dripping from the walls da da da. It's like no, there's actually, life happens, shit happens,
Mm,
sometimes really traumatic shit happens.
right?
And how do you overcome that, or what do you need to do for yourself,
Yeah,
such that love isn't lost.
exactly.
And so Kim reached out to me and said, would you like to have an episode about childhood sexual trauma and sexual abuse and your experience with that?
Yeah.
And I am so thrilled and overjoyed, and not obviously not that that happened to
Yeah.
you, but that you reached out to me, because I think that it is absolutely an important topic to talk about,
Yes.
because it isn't talked about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It is
Yeah.
one of those. It's the dirty secret in families that everybody knows, but no one talks about. And
Mm-hmm.
even in our more enlightened society that we are now,
Mm-hmm.
people really don't want to talk about it. They don't want to face the fact that this is not something, that happened back in the past. That doesn't happen today. It happens today. It happens every day, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
And if we as a society cannot honestly talk about not only that it's happening, but how do we help the people that it's happening to? Past stopping the abuse, but also helping them heal from it in an emotionally way, but also in a sexually way, because they're still humans.
Right.
We do like having sex. So even if it's bad sex.
Yeah. I dated a guy once that was like, sex is like pizza. At least you're still eating pizza.
Yeah.
I was like, I've had people disagree with that, because there's a lot of different ways you can take it. But,
Yeah.
if you're having it's consensual
Sex.
sex,
Yes.
at
Exactly.
least you're still having sex. It's fun.
And I think it was your second podcast where you and your sound guy Sean were talking to each other
Uh-huh.
about the orgasm question, how to make it happen and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And and one of your comments was about someone who had orgasm for the first time, and they reached out to their friend like, oh my god, I finally did it. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's happened to me. I was that person. I was 30 years old the very first time, not that I orgasmed, but that I masturbated. 30
Oh.
years old. And
Yeah.
that was the first thing I did. I called my best friend. I'm like, oh my God, you're not going to believe it. I just masturbated. And she's like, great. I'm happy for you. Because she knew my challenge,
Right.
what had happened to me. So, and she was one of the people like trying to teach me a different view of life on how to accept things and how to overcome things, and that sounds very vague,
Yeah.
but in what I found growing up after being molested by different family members, and that included my stepfather and male cousins and stuff like that, is that for a longest time, if I felt pleasure in sex,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I did something wrong.
Right. Because that's what you associated it with.
Yes,
Yeah.
because, and this is one of the things, is that because I was so young when it first started, I really didn't know it was wrong.
Mm.
And so my body is like any other body, human body. You stimulate it, it feels good. Don't stop.
Right.
So it wasn't until I got older and caught by my mom and other adults that my 17-year-old cousin was doing this to me when I was really little,
Yeah.
that I didn't know that that's when the shame came in, that all of the trauma of like,
Really?
oh my God, because I didn't know
Right.
because
Right. I mean, how would you know?
exactly,
Because that's all you've ever known.
exactly.
Yeah.
I was little and it felt good and it wasn't hurting me at the time. There were
Right.
some things that did hurt, and whenever they would start trying, like fingers being inserted in me, that hurt, and I would like no, I would, and then I would stop, and then they would stop because I would fight them because I'm making a scene, I'm making noise, and
Right. Right. And they know that it's bad and they don't want to get caught.
exactly.
Yeah.
So once I realized it was wrong, I was taught that it was wrong, luckily.
Yeah.
So whenever I would start feeling aroused, and to this day, don't put your fingers on me down there.
Really?
Really. I don't want you down there. Keep your fingers away from me. I will take your penis, but that's about it.
Oh my God.
But keep your fingers away from me.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
um
So it's like the trauma is still
it's there. And
yeah.
it's one of those things that even when I married my children's father, and being so young, we got married like a month after I graduated from high school. I'm like 19.
Right.
We're trying to get pregnant. I wasn't getting pregnant. So I went to the doctor and I'm like, I think there's something wrong with me. And he's like, well, let's have an exam and see. And he's like, even in the exam, he's like, you're going to have to relax. You're going to, because one of my problems is that sex hurts. And he's like, you're going to have to relax. He goes, you are so tight. My vagina was so tight that he's like, that's why it hurts. You're going to have to learn how to relax that muscle. And I'm like, how do you do that? I mean, it's like, he's like, I'm going to put my finger right here. And he did. He put it on the bottom, I don't know, like what you call like the floor of my vagina. He goes, now, this is the muscle I want you to relax. And he's like, and literally I was like squeezing all of my, like my leg muscles, my ab muscles, trying to figure out what that muscle was. I didn't even know that was a muscle.
Yeah.
And relax it. And he goes, now, this is what you need to do in order to have sex that doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
Is to relax that muscle. So from then on, sex didn't hurt as much because 9 times out of 10, I could, start relaxing that muscle and everything.
But I mean, you trained yourself to tense up, to try to protect yourself.
Exactly. It's like, even after the trauma, I'm married now, it's okay to have sex. It's okay for these things to happen to you. Right. Even then, my body's like tightened up. And I had to learn to allow these things to happen to me, and it's okay. Yeah. So that's interesting for me, because sometimes it still hurts. I'm almost 50, and it's not like this happened yesterday. I'm almost 50, and I still, luckily now they actually have physical therapy for women. And it's more of it's like an incontinence. I'm not saying the word.
Incontinence. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for pronouncing words for me.
You're welcome. Hey, sometimes people have to pronounce words for me, so
I am bad at that. But they actually have physical therapists for that, for women, for older women now, and that was one of the exercises that I had to learn was breathing exercises that helped me relax during sex. Because that was one of the things is that I can relax at the beginning, and then after sex, I'm super like clenched on again, almost like I won't let him go. I won't let my husband go. He's stuck in me now, and when he pulls out, it hurts. And she's like, "Well, you're gonna have to do these breathing exercises to relax that diaphragm, to relax that muscle." And so, we sit there and do this whole breathing in and relaxing. And then I'm like, okay. And I was like, can you feel the difference? And he's like, yeah, I can feel the difference. Okay, when you feel at the loosest, that's when I want you to dismount, do a backflip and everything.
Gymnast.
Ta-da! Right. Ta-da! Do a backflip, spiral twist,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so
Yeah. Well,
So,
and that's,
and that works. And,
yeah.
and like I said, and that is something until, recently, I didn't realize that my that trauma from my childhood still affects me 40, 50 years, 50 years, that'd be one. But,
Yeah.
40 years later, 45 years later, because I was very young when it started. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one way that it still affects you, but you just said that you still notice that it affects you. So did you think that it didn't affect you as
yeah,
much, or?
because, because it's not something I think about every day.
Uh-huh.
There for a while, you think about your trauma all the time when it's still new to you.
Right.
And then you move on with your life, and you might go weeks, months, years, and then you won't, and then it will pop back up in some form or fashion. I don't know why, but it does.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a psychologist. I'm sure there's a very technical term for all that.
Sure, but this is just your experience.
Just from my experience.
Yeah.
So, there are things like, and it's just subtle things, like, but it wasn't trauma. That sexual episode wasn't traumatic for me that I had with my husband. It felt really good and I enjoyed myself very much. Thank you. So, why would my body, react in such a way that it's protecting itself? So it's just weird
Yeah.
sometimes.
I mean, I'm not a psychologist either. But I do know that, we do train our brains, especially, from a very young age.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you train your brain a lot from the age from 1 to 5,
Mm-hmm.
all of that input like coming into your system, and then
Yeah.
you're continuously training. You can start training your brain when you're 30, you can start training your brain when you're 50, you can start
Mm-hmm.
training your brain when you're 70. You're just creating new neural pathways,
Mm-hmm.
because we're animals, right?
Yeah.
And we're designed to survive. And so your brain created neural pathways that said, when this happens, do this,
Yeah.
right? So it's just like, so your brain just created pathways. It's like, when this, experience happens, do this.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like your body still has that, reaction response, like it's still ingrained in
Yeah.
you, even though it's been so long. So, well, what other things, have you done? Like when you discovered, like you said, that you discovered that it was bad,
Yeah.
like,
And this is where accepting your light and dark in
yeah.
you, because it felt good, because I was being stimulated. It felt good. Um, I started noticing that even after I knew it was wrong, I still allowed my cousins to do things to me, and me have to do things to them. To this day, I do not like giving blowjobs.
Uh-huh.
I don't. And it was one of the things I didn't like doing it then, but I was made to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And this time, because I knew what was happening was wrong, the threat that they could give me about being caught and being punished and that kind of stuff was more real, because of the violent home that I grew up in. I knew that I was going to get caught. If they told, then I'd be really, I'd probably, get a beating,
Mm-hmm.
which was actually threatened to me from my mother. I will beat you if I ever get this happening again.
Right.
Okay, 5 years old. Okay. But it kept feeling, but it felt good. And I find it ironic that, oh, sorry, when I was younger, like prepubescent, that it was my male, like my teenage cousins doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then my mother and my stepfather were just outraged and just horrified and threatened to, beat everybody and kill them all if this ever happens again. And then when I became pubescent and I started developing breasts and curves and everything, my stepfather started messing with me. So now I went from it feeling good, and I'm seeking it because I was taught that this feels good and your body likes it, you're going to do it.
Right.
Just like it's candy, it's sweet. Ooh, I like it. You just
Right.
keep going.
Right.
Even if when you're overweight like me, you still seek candy because it tastes good, even though you know it's not good for you. But when my stepfather started, and I'm shaking because this is very,
You're allowed to be however you need to be.
it stopped being for fun and pleasure to this person's supposed to love me.
Mm-hmm.
And when my mom found out, she confronted him with a shotgun and said that if you ever touch my daughter again, I will kill you. He took the gun from her and beat her so bad. I thought she was going to die. And the reason this all came to light, what he was doing to me, is that he started messing with me one night coming back from grandma's. And there were 6 of us kids. So it usually took 2 vehicles for us to all go from one place to another.
Mm-hmm.
So mom had my baby brother and sister and 2 of my brothers in the car with her. And then in the pickup, it was me and my brother Kenneth. And my brother Kenneth is Down syndrome. And he's the oldest of all of his kids. And Dad, this is the 70s, he let Kenneth drive for a little bit, let Kenneth get in his lap and drive for a little bit. And then he said, hey, Kim, you want to come drive too? I'm like, yeah, sure. And I didn't think anything of it. And because Kenneth was there. There was, he's not going to do anything in front of somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
But I was wrong. And he started messing with me. And I literally stopped driving the vehicle and started beating him about the head and telling him to stop touching me and screaming at him. And he said, you're going to make us wreck and kill us all. I didn't care. I started fighting him. And it upset Kenneth so bad that when he went to school the next day, because he had a special school he went to, he told his teachers. And the school called my mom and told my mom what had happened. And she asked me that night when she was helping me get out of the bath. And I told her, yeah, that happened. And she goes, well, tomorrow people from the state are going to come and talk to you. And I want you to tell them that Kenneth was mistaken and that it was your cousins that did it. And that your parents have already taken care of that problem. Okay. And then she went across the hall and he beat the holy shit out of her. She has this thing in her ear because he hit her so hard. He broke that bone in her ear that helps you hear.
Mm-hmm.
She has an implant. So the next day when the state came, I told him the truth. I didn't tell him the truth, excuse me. I wanted to tell him the truth, but I was afraid. So I told the lie, like you do. No one wants to talk about child sexual abuse, and no one wants to talk about family physical abuse. You lie, everybody knows about it. You just keep going on. So it took a long time after that for me to, I think I started wearing a bra when I was 9. So that happened when I was 9 years old.
Wow.
And then when I was 12, my mother sent me to go live with my grandmother because she caught my stepfather in the middle of the night, because we lived in a 2-bedroom trailer house. And at that time it was just me and my baby brother and sister. And my brothers were living with their mom. And my sister and I slept in a twin bed, and my brother, he slept on a cot in our room. And she said that she caught him, my stepdad, moving my sister to the cot so that I would have more room in the bed because I was all crowded. And she's like, I knew he was trying to get to you because at 12 years old, I looked like an 18-year-old.
Really?
I had, matter of fact, my next door neighbor, he was 12 as well, and he was my boyfriend. Holding hands, not even kissing, just holding hands. We would play games, and mom's like, "What kind of games?" Chase, hide and seek. I was a very typical little kid, 12-year-old boyfriend, girlfriend thing,
Right.
holding hands. Oh, you're girlfriend, boyfriend now, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I remember I was going into his house because my mom was over there having coffee with his mom, and I had my baby brother on my hip, and my boyfriend and his grandparents pulled up, and they asked him, "Who's that?" And he's like, "Oh, that's my girlfriend." They about fell out of the car dead because they thought I was 18 years old and that kid on my hip was mine. And I'm like, "No, I'm 12 and this is my little brother."
Wow.
Because, like I said, I started wearing a bra when I was 9.
Right.
By the time I was 12, I was already a C cup.
Wow.
And I had curves, and I hadn't even started my period at that point. That happened a couple of months later. And I think that was like something that, I don't know, triggered in my stepfather. He started, I would wake up from having dreams where I was like feeling really good, and I couldn't figure out why. All of a sudden, I'm having these dreams where I'm all like, my body's like zinging with, like, I didn't know what it was. I'm like, man, I feel like really good. Like someone was messing with me, stimulating my body. And I think it was my stepdad in my sleep, and he was messing with me in my sleep. And because I'm asleep, I didn't
It didn't like connect that that was actually happening.
know.
It was just, yeah.
And then when my mom told me she was sending me to my grandmother's, and I asked her why, and she said, "Well, I caught your stepdad moving your sister so he could be with you and he could sleep with you." And I was like, "Oh." I never told her about my dreams, about how I was. I don't like. I don't know if they are dreams or not, but that's, up into that point.
Your memory is that it's a dream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, and that. And I went from that to being in my grandma's house with one of the boys that's molested me when I was younger. So now I really am being molested, and it's not just in my head.
Yeah.
And it's very close to penetration, and to the point where it's the whole typical, "Oh, come on, just one time." We all heard it on a date. "Oh, come on, one time."
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I was like, "No, I'm not. No, this is not going to happen." And I eventually got out of that situation because of my real father. He put me in like a orphanage to get me away from all of the damage that was being done.
How old were you
I was 12.
when you went to the orphanage?
Yeah, it's not, well, it was the Masonic Home and School of Texas. And it was originally built as an orphanage in a widow's home for the Masons' children and wives. And then they moved the widows to a different home to have their own place. And then they eventually started allowing kids to go to that school who came from broken homes. And my home was definitely broken.
It definitely falls into that category.
So I grew up, so I went a space of quite a few years of being safe. But now talking to other ex-students, they weren't safe. They were abused and molested by some of the people that worked there, or older kids that went there. And I'm like, that I am so sorry that happened to you, but for me, it was a safe place. For whatever indignity I had ever imagined I had suffered at that school, compared not even to 1 ounce to what I suffered in my own home.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I'm so sorry. And I am. I truly am to this day sorry that there are people out there that suffered, and I found it a haven, and I was safe and I was secure. Yeah. And then guys trying to date me, trying to touch me and trying to be, sexual with me. And I'm like fighting them, literally, just paws off. Actually, my very first boyfriend, who was 4 years older than me, was at this school. And he's like, all paws, hands, like, trying to kiss him was like trying to kiss an octopus. His like hands were everywhere. He was touching my breast. He was grabbing my butt. He was trying to put his hands down into my crotch. And finally, I just like had enough of it. And I pushed him back and I slapped him. I said, keep your fucking hands to yourself. You do not touch me that way. And he was like, oh, okay. And he was pretty cool about it until we had like an assembly day. And it was freezing in the gym. It was in the gym. What is that called? Oh, the auditorium. That's what it is. The place with all the chairs.
Yeah.
The auditorium. And he tried to, be all sneaky and touch me. And I just, right there in front of everybody and all of his friends. I didn't talk to him for 2 weeks. He tried to talk to me. Don't even a hand. And back, this is the 80s. We needed a hand in the face, but he got the hair flip, get out of my face kind of thing. And he, and from then on, he was respectful of my wishes when it came. So he held my hand, we kissed, and he would hug me. That was it. Or I allowed him to put his hands on my butt. He asked, can I put my hands on your butt? And I'm like, yes. So
in a way, you trained him.
I did. I don't know if he continued to be that respectful.
You would hope so.
I would hope so. But yeah, I was like, and then whenever I was 17, we went on a date because, he was already like 21 and all that stuff. We went on a date and because he was on a motorcycle, and it had started raining, my real father allowed him to stay the night. And I didn't think anything of it until the next morning when my dad was gone. What do you mean my dad's gone? I didn't know. He hadn't had him to work, and I didn't know. And there's this note saying, hey, go get my kid something to eat. There's no food in the house. So he went and got me something to eat. And I'm like, hey, this would be a perfect opportunity to lose my virginity. Yes. And he wouldn't. He was like, I can't. He goes, I can't. We're naked, everything, hugging and a kissing and a squeezing and, you licking everything, whatever you could think of, we're doing it, except for penetration. And I'm so frustrated because I'm like, you're the one person that I would ever do this with.
Right.
Really? And he's like, I can't. And then he wants to get in the shower with me. Oh, hell no. I don't think so. They don't work that way, cupcake. And after I got out of the shower, he was still sitting on the toilet waiting for me to get out of the shower, and I wrapped a towel around me, and he sat me on his lap, and he goes, I love you and respect you way too much to do that. He goes, I'd just rather not be this way. And I'm like, okay. And I went on with my life, and I met my kid's father. He had no problem but I had a problem issue learning that it's okay to be stimulated and it not be a bad thing anymore. Because at first I wanted to be stimulated and I allowed it to happen until it was with somebody that I cared and loved about. And then as I got older and you seek adult relationships, at some point you have to be like, okay, you have to allow yourself to be stimulated again, to be touched, to be vulnerable. I think that's a good word.
Yeah.
But I noticed that it only goes so far with me, even to this day. My husband's younger than me. And in another conversation, one of your podcasts are talking about how, and I think it was with Sean as well, about how they don't teach young men how to have sex, how to pleasure a woman, and all that stuff. So not only am I teaching my husband what I like, and that it's okay for him to tell me what he likes, what he needs. And I'm always asking, what do you need from me? What do you need me to touch something? You need me to bite something? You want me to scratch you? What? And he's like, so me helping him figure out what he wants helps me relax enough to be honest with him about what I want.
That's interesting.
It's kind of like, it's like helping yourself through helping others. Because sometimes
Yeah.
I don't know why that helps sometimes, but when you're helping other people, you grow and you understand,
Yeah.
and it opens your mind to how to, and sometimes, feeding the hungry helps me realize, oh, I can cook cheaper and I spend so much money on food, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it gives you a different perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I had, I know I keep jumping back and forth in timeline here, and I'm trying to be consistent.
That's all right. Well, and the other thing too is like, you had all of this, you had all that happen. And, what were some of the things, because I know that you said that you went to therapy for a while. Like what were some of the things that you did individually? Did you seek out therapy or
I did have therapy, but ironically, it wasn't for sexual abuse. It was for an eating disorder, which is another term for trying to control things in your life that when your life is out of control. I went because I still do. I have an eating disorder, and some of the things I battle. But I realized that a lot of my catalysts for changing and developing and growing are me to be a better parent for my children. Because I noticed that my weird, odd eating habits, I was starting to affect my children. I was starting to draw them into my eating disorder. We would have junk food picnics. I would load up with every chip, cookie, candy, soda, Kool-Aid, whatever. And we'd go to the park or go to the river, and we would eat and gorge, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And throw away all the stuff when we were done, and then go back home.
No evidence?
No evidence.
Yeah.
So, and then I would spend my drug of choice for eliminating all of that was stuff that made you poop. I can't. Some
Laxative?
laxative, but it was a liquid in liquid form, like milk and magnesia or something like that. I think that's what it's called. I'm not sure, but I remember one day I wanted to so bad, but I knew it was bad for me, but I wanted to. And I went to the store, took the kids' store for this purpose, was to buy this stuff. And I found it, and I stood there and I debated. And then I walked down the aisle, walked around, looked at the other side, and came back. I think I'd done that 4 or 5 times. And the only reason I know that is because my son was like, "Are you going to buy it or not?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "We've been here 5 times." And I'm like, "Yes, I'm buying it." And I just picked it up and we bought it and left it. And and that made me realize that, like, man, on every level of my life, I'm of this eating disorder. It's impacting my kids in some form of way.
Yeah.
And so was, the abuse, not only the sexual abuse, but the physical abuse and the emotional trauma and the terror of being with my stepfather and in that household. As we spoke a little bit before, I went from suppressing all of my feelings and my anger and my fears to being an adult and just letting every emotion come out the way it was. Didn't try to filter it, and scaring my son to and I was having all of these weird things happening, and like I'm like highs and lows, and come to find out I'm bipolar. Yay! Aren't we happy now? And going to therapy was to stop me from being crazy, so I didn't keep hurting my kids.
Yeah.
I was tired of my kids being afraid of me. I was tired of me being, affecting them in their eating habits. My son already had an eating habit. Maybe it's my problem. I don't know. Maybe it's my fault. I mean, he was a so severely picky eater, which I don't think that was my fault. I think it's just him. Now that I think about it, I mean, how does an eating disorder that I have affect a 1-year-old? I'm not sure, but as a parent, you take those on. It gotta be my fault.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that that's pretty normal as a parent to be like, well,
Right?
It's clearly my fault. It's my kid, my fault. Yeah. But doesn't necessarily make it true.
That's true.
Yeah.
And that's got to learn that too.
Yeah.
But the therapy was never about the abuse. about the trauma. I don't even think, I don't think I really spoke about it. It was more focused on my current situation, because the eating disorder was new. It was a new development and in my life, and it was, one of those things that, she did teach me parenting techniques, anger control, that kind of stuff, helping me learn to control myself. So I'm a better parent. It's been my whole life. And luckily, my daughter, and my son, as far as I know, have not been traumatized. I think my daughter did have an incident unfortunately, with my oldest brother, the one that's Down syndrome. I think he did touch her boobies when she was first developing them, and I think that has placed a fear for Down syndrome people in her, because it happened when she was, 10, 11 years old. Even though that's as far as it went, and she came right to us. And I love that she came right to us and told us what happened. And she was traumatized. And me and my ex-husband, we were, married at the time. We comforted her, we loved her. And I apologized. Oh my God, I am so sorry that this happened to you. You will never be alone with him ever again.
Mm-hmm.
And I did say something to my brother. Whether he understood or not, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
Because his Down syndrome is at as his level of understanding is like at a 5-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
So I told him, you can't do that. You need to stop and don't, but I don't know if he ever understood me, but I did tell him.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my daughter telling me that, she, that still bothers her, and that's one of her things, is that she's uncomfortable around people with Down syndrome because of that. And I'm like, I get it. I mean, I was traumatized by a little person when I was 3 years old. He kept jumping out of the bushes and scaring me. And now I'm almost 50 years old, and I see a little person, I start hyperventilating. I know it's irrational. He's not going to jump out and scare me. I see him plainly, and he's not going to hurt me, but it's, it's a fear. And, so
and it's that association. It's like your brain makes that association.
Exactly.
And you just have to be aware of it as an adult and just be like, yep, that's irrational. Okay. Got it. Got that reaction. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not rational. That's all right.
So
Yeah.
outside of that, for her, I don't think anything else has happened. And if something has happened to her as an adult, she has not shared that with me. And I would hope that she can, because sexual trauma isn't just a childhood thing, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, and I think that you've created, because of your experiences, that you've created an environment for her where she feels safe and understood, and that if something like that does, I mean, I think that the response that you had was appropriate.
Yeah.
Where, like, not even appropriate, it's just safe, and what you needed to do as a parent, and it was something that was missing for you. I think that part of like your ability to have that response, like I shared something with you about like my sexual trauma, and your immediate response was, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And but it really is because of, I see that because of what you went through, that you just want people to be safe.
Yeah.
And you want people to be heard and loved.
Yeah.
And that you go out of your way to provide that for people where you can.
I try.
You do. And what, like, since being an adult, and I know that the other day we talked a little bit more about like your sexual experiences as an adult, and being able to explore. But what I want to ask is, what advice, because it sounds like a lot of the help that you got from like professional help or like therapy and things like that really had to do with making sure that you were a good mom for your kids.
Yeah.
And like that was like your, if you weren't going to do it for you, you were going to do it for them.
Yeah.
And to make sure that, they're safe,
Yeah.
even from like you.
Exactly.
And like, and how whatever however, you were being, with them. But what advice, or what would you say to people who have had, traumatic sexual experiences, maybe as a kid, maybe not as a kid, but what would you say as far as moving on past, or like I don't know if moving on is even the right word, but like coping or having a healthy sexual relationship as an adult?
What I find that is one of the things that is that I have to acknowledge in myself that that yes, what happened to me when I was younger was traumatic, and it was wrong on the part of the people who knew what they were doing was wrong. They knew what they were doing that was wrong,
Right.
and that I had to learn to accept and within myself that my body's response was not wrong, was not evil. I'm not going to go to hell, and I'm not a sinner because my body enjoyed what was happening to it, to the point that it didn't. That's okay, and like I said, it goes back to accepting we all have a light and dark in us, and we have to accept both sides, or we're not going to be able to heal from trauma and move on. Because at some point or another, I find within myself that as soon as I start trying to divorce myself from one side of who I am, I don't get anywhere in my life. I find my life harder. I find it just like everything is just numbed and in half. But when I accept both sides of myself, and in what if some kind of situation, I try to use logic. I think my coping skill is that I have really tried to evolve away from emotion dictating my responses and my choices. I don't know if that's necessarily healthy, but I find that I don't look at sex as an emotional transaction between a husband and wife, a boyfriend or girlfriend, or a man and woman, that people say, oh, let's go make love. No, you're going to go have sex. Love is something different that you make between yourselves in everyday life. Sex is something you do for, if you're lucky, an hour. Sometimes 3 minutes. So there's a difference between love and sex. And it's one of those things when it irritates me. So my conscious choice that I have made as an adult is that I view sex not as an emotional thing. It can become emotional because then, especially if it's really good sex and you have it with the same person more times, then you start building those connections emotionally to this person, because now this person, you see this person, they make you feel good physically, which in turn makes you want to be with them more, and you start developing feelings for them, because now you're like I can't explain it. You're more apt to, hey, what do you want to hang out? Get to know them. That's why that was one of my things. Sure, I'll have sex with you, but we're not going to do it no more than 3 times. Why not 3 times? And then I'm now emotionally connected to you, and it's harder for me to walk away. And I've had that conversation many times. Don't fall in love. As you said before, don't fall in love, because this is not a permanent thing. Well, which is hard for guys to hear, because usually they're not used to that kind of conversation from a woman. Usually that's a male thinking. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. I'm out the door. See you later. And I'm like, so there. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, and I think, on one hand, I think the distinction between love and sex is important.
Yeah.
And I think that, the feelings that you can have for a person aren't connected to a physical activity.
Right.
And I also think that you can enhance those feelings with sex.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like you can, like I know for me, in my partnerships that I've had now and in the past, that sex is something that, builds and strengthens our emotional bond and mental bond as well. But it's not because of the actual physical activity itself. It's because we already have that.
Yes.
Right. And it's just something, it's like, it's also just doing another activity that you really love to do, like whatever it is, like going mountain climbing or what, I don't know, but it's
I
just,
don't know who likes mountain climbing,
I have a partner that loves mountain climbing.
yay for her.
Yay.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. And I think that that's really important. And is there anything else that you want to say or share or have expressed? What do you want people to get out of you sharing today?
What I want ultimately is for people to feel comfortable talking about it, about their trauma, and not in the fact of like just to talk about it, but in a way that they are honestly trying to seek out. They're not just coming up to random people and saying, I was sexually abused when I was a kid, but sitting with people who have gone through it and that can help guide them maybe into loving themselves and forgiving themselves for something that it's not even their fault. That's the biggest thing. I'm sorry, I'm gonna cry again.
No, it's poignant, and there's no need to apologize for crying because it's important.
I don't have any like. I'm sorry if you thought this was going to be one of those profound things.
This is profound.
There's no like pearls of wisdom, like other than learning to accept what happened. It sucked. I'm sorry it happened.
Yeah.
Forgiving yourself for your part, even because you carry that guilt and shame. It wasn't your fault.
Yeah.
But forgive yourself anyway. You
Yeah.
can keep telling, well, I didn't do anything wrong. But if you don't go through the act of actually saying, I forgive you.
Yeah.
I forgive you. I love you. That's the hard part, is people telling them that they love themselves.
Yeah.
And believing it.
Yeah.
By God. I can say the words all the time, but actually believing in yourself and saying, I love you. Looking yourself in the mirror and saying, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
And meaning it. And forgiving yourself. And then being able to start talking about it. Mm-hmm. Not making it that hidden secret anymore. I think once more people are openly talking about it, though I'm all incognito now,
yeah.
That I think as a society, if we stop hiding our shit, so, excuse me, stop hiding the ugliness of our humanity, of our society. Mm-hmm. I think that's the only way we're gonna overcome this. We have to start
talking about it.
Yeah. And not just, I don't know, so this is going to sound bad, but not in a whiny way. Like, oh my God, I was traumatized. Yes, you were. Pick yourself up. Let's go. We got things to do. And that's my personality.
Yes.
I'm the tighten your bootstraps, baby. We got things to do kind of person.
Right.
and I do acknowledge that there are other people who aren't like that. So.
But that is very much who you are. Absolutely. And there is something to be said for, like for that. Yeah. There's absolutely a space for that. Absolutely. And have you forgiven yourself?
Here, and I can say yes. In the past couple of years, and I'm literally serious. Since I've met, I'm on my third marriage. So with my this husband, which is my last, I'm not doing this anymore. As we talked before, so if this doesn't work, it's either we're dying. We're not getting out of this any other way, and that's not in a threatening way. It's just the way it is. If God forbid, my husband passes away, I will never be married again. I will shack up with somebody, sure, but the whole married bit, I wasn't planning on getting married again anyway, but he changed my mind.
Yeah.
But anywho, being with him and helping him learn to be more confident in the bedroom, learning what a woman wants and how to accept that it's okay to touch me there. It's okay to say what you want. And it's okay for me to tell you what I want. It's helped me accept what has happened, and it's helped me to realize that it's okay for me to enjoy sex, and that it's okay for me to want to have sex. Even though in my past I've had lots of sex, sometimes it wasn't very good sex, but it was sex.
Yeah.
And then, and ultimately, it was to recognize that I was sorry, that I'm sorry that it happened to myself, and that I forgive myself for it happening, and that I had to acknowledge that you were a little kid, couldn't stop that.
Yeah.
And forgiving myself for not being a superhero to myself, when I was a little kid. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like I can't, and I'm like, I'm saying I'm sorry to myself, and I forgive myself, but what am I forgiving myself? I'm forgiving myself for not saving myself when I was little.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, how could you,
Right.
like looking back on it, in my trauma, there's all of the, I could have done this, I should have done this.
Yeah.
What if I would have done this?
Mm-hmm.
What if, but I didn't do that. I did what I did.
Yeah.
And you did what you did.
Yeah.
And thank you for forgiving yourself.
Have you forgiven yourself?
I have forgiven myself.
Okay.
Yeah. That took a while too for me. It took about 10 years.
Right.
Yep. Forgiving myself for that was actually a very recent thing that I did. And it wasn't until I started talking about it and I told my family what happened, and I forgave myself. I forgave myself when I started talking about it to my family.
Yeah.
And my next question is, do you love yourself?
I do. And I think that's why I don't get along with people. Because I love myself more than I love you. To put up with your bullshit.
Good girl. Oh, I'm sorry. I love myself.
Like, I don't know what story you're tripping on, but I don't know. No,
oh my God.
It's one of those things. And I told my husband, and I tell people, I said, do not marry somebody because you need them for anything. You shouldn't marry a person or be in a relationship with a person because you need them to make you happy. You need them to make you feel important. You need them to make you special. Or you need them to take care of you. You marry a person or you be in a relationship with a person because you love them.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
That's
the only reason.
Yep.
And I made that clear to my husband when we married. So I'm not marrying you for your money or, your rank or, for you to solve all my problems. I'm marrying you because I love you. Mm-hmm. I go, so if you decide that you don't want to be married anymore, no, skin off my nose, I'm out the door. Mm-hmm. Because I don't need you to take care of me.
Yeah.
I need you to love me.
Yeah.
And that's all I'm going to do for you is love you as well. Of course, my way of loving people is that I take care of them. My way of loving people is like, here, let me make you something to eat. And, are you comfortable? You need some more pillows? And, as my
You're
daughter.
Very acts of service person.
I
Yes.
am. As my daughter, it can, I'm very suffocating. I'm like, are you okay? Climb in bed with you. How was your day? Snuggle with you. And,
Right.
I'm an all-in type of person. I love you or I don't love you. Or I'm in this relationship or I'm not. I'm not on the fence. And if you are, figure your shit out because I got things to do.
I love that. I love it. I love all of it. And listen, I want you to know, like you apologized at one point, which I'm going to tell you was inappropriate.
I'm sorry. I'm doing it again. I'm sorry. What did I do? I'm being scolded on air. Oh my gosh.
And I say inappropriate jokingly, but just to tell you that you sharing your story is a big deal.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you for pointing that out.
It's a big deal. And even if you're not saying things that are like, earth shattering or, whatever, like going to be a Pinterest quote anytime soon.
Oh God.
Which I think that a lot of what you said is very moving, very poignant, very earth shattering for people. And for you, it's just your life.
Yeah.
For you, it's just, these are the things that have happened in your life. It's something that you've come to terms with, what you've learned out of it, what you've continued to learn out of it. For you, and I'm speaking to you directly, for you, that's just the water that you swim in.
Yes.
And you don't realize, and I heard it when you said that, but you don't realize how incredible it is that you've gone through what you've gone through, that you have discovered the things about yourself that you have done. You've moved mountains, most of them your own mountains, for the sake of your kids, for the sake of their lives. You are the person you are today to sit here and reach out to me and be like, hey, I want to share my story. It's incredible. And and I know that being acknowledged is really uncomfortable.
It is. Thank you so much for pointing that out.
You're welcome. But I really want you to get that you might not have gotten up until this point, that how incredible that is.
Yeah.
So
you're right.
Really, thank you.
Thank you. And you're right. It is hard to take that compliment. And it's not the first time I've had a hard time accepting that I did this. I did it on purpose. Like you said, I sought you out.
Yeah.
And I did this on purpose. And that you're right. I should acknowledge that it took great courage to do that. And I think as a humans, we sell ourselves short in our accomplishments.
Yes.
We're so eager to point out everybody else's accomplishments.
Yes.
Except for our own. And when people's like, oh, but you did this, and you're like, and?
Yeah, whatever. Like, duh, that was Tuesday.
Exactly. Exactly.
But really, thank you so much. I so appreciate and acknowledge you, and I love you with my whole heart. Thank you so much.
I love you. I love you. And just keep your good work going. This is good work. And it's two friends chatting, sure.
Yeah.
But it's good work, and I really appreciate it. And listening to your podcast has opened my mind to like, that's a possibility. Or didn't see it that way, that kind of stuff. And I really like your talks with Sean.
Isn't Sean great? He's so great.
He's so awesome. But thank you for allowing me to be here today.
You're so welcome. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome. Right. Ciao.
Thank you for listening to Love Dripping from the Walls. You can follow on Instagram or Facebook at Love Dripping from the Walls. Leave comments and questions, and I may share your thoughts on the podcast. Please rate and review on whatever platform you are listening on. If you want to support Love Dripping from the Walls, log on to the Anchor app and subscribe or give monthly donations. Keep listening and keep loving.